Thank you so much and welcome to the 425 show. Today we have a really exciting episode on Security Service Edge with Jeff Bly and Janice Ricketts. If y'all missed their session at the Experts Conference or Tech Conference 2 weeks ago in Dallas, now is your chance to hear it. I heard that they had over 100 folks that attended live, so it's going to be a great conversation today. If you're looking to access some of our future 425 show episodes, be sure to follow us on LinkedIn, on the Microsoft Entra community page. On the 30th, we're going to have a great discussion on Zero Trust and some new capabilities and workshops that we have coming out. So it's going to be on October 30th at 8 a.m. Pacific time. And if you want to see previous episodes of the 425 show, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel on the Microsoft Security community page. We'll have all of those links in the chat for y'all. But without further ado, I'll hand it off to Jeff and Janice.
Thanks, Bailey. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Today, we're going to be talking about Microsoft's Security Service Edge solution. My name is Jeff Bly. I'm a Senior Product Manager on the Identity and Network Access team here at Microsoft.
Hi, all. I'm also very excited to be here today. I'm Janice Ricketts, and like Jeff, I am a Senior Product Manager in the Identity and Network Access division at Microsoft. I also focus on Security Service Edge.
So a little bit about what we're going to be covering today. First, we're going to talk about Zero Trust, kind of set the framework, why this is important, why we're even talking about this. We'll give an overview of how it's and then we're going to jump into some deep dive, really going deep on Entra Private Access. We'll talk a little bit about Microsoft Entra Internet Access. And then we'll leave you hopefully with some tips and gotchas. Janice and I have been helping a bunch of customers deploy this, and there's some things I wish more people knew to help you avoid pain. So that's what I want to leave you with, so that when you try this in your own environments, you'll be able to be successful right out of the gate. And then we'll do some questions and answers. So over to Janice for our section on Zero Trust.
Awesome. Thanks, Jeff. Really appreciate the intro. We wanted to start with some Zero Trust principles because that is the topic on everyone's mind. Zero Trust is a really important concept around how do we ensure that the right people are accessing the right resources and only the right resources? And how do we manage across all of our architectural components on premises, in the cloud? How do we minimize all the seams between these components? A strong Zero Trust strategy is going to align your organization's missions and priorities, risks and processes, but you will be balancing inevitably how close to perfect can you get within budget. So we're trying to help you understand some of the concepts that can help you balance your risks against your costs. Your solution is going to assume that attackers will attack at every level, any vulnerability, all of those seams. Your reporting and response procedures assume the attacker is already on your network. We want to help you ensure that you have verified explicitly. So we want to talk about Security Service Edge. That's the whole point of today's conversation. How does SSE integrate into your Zero Trust security strategy? And in a nutshell, it's the component that enables you to enforce just-in-time access to all of your resources from any user in your enterprise and any device that you manage by controlling your network traffic. Can you advance the slide for me, please? So we at Microsoft take security very seriously, and of course, Jeff and I, for sure, it's our entire job. And we understand that Zero Trust framework is that key component of your success. So I don't really want to drain this slide here, but I did want to show, and I had to kind of like blow it up a little bit, where does Security Service Edge fall in your Zero Trust framework? So you can see in the top right of the slide, we can see it's falling in the verify explicitly and in the least privileged access components of your Zero Trust scenarios. And so that takes us out of Zero Trust and moves us on to the SSE piece. So let's take a look at the next couple of slides, the overview of the SSE solution. Basically, I'm actually so excited about Security Service Edge. This is a new product area for Microsoft. It's a network security product area. It is a way for you to replace your VPN. That is what we're trying to do here. And what happened, the history of this, is that customers came to our colleagues within Microsoft and said, listen, you've got everything we want. You've got conditional access policies, you've got continuous access evaluation, you've got a great private wide area network. Can't you give us a network solution that integrates so we can continue to reduce the seams and friction points that we have in our security scenarios? And we need that now more than ever, right? And so this slide is trying to highlight what are the issues that we see today? What has happened? And especially during COVID, we can see that maybe in the old days, people were all working from within your corporate network and your firewall was a fine solution because most of your employees were on premises and only VPN'd in rarely. But now everybody's VPNing in. And when they're not VPNing in, they're accessing Microsoft endpoints, they're accessing SaaS apps, and you probably don't really want to hairpin that stuff through your network. So how can we solve a problem for you using Microsoft assets that enable you to control access to all of your private network components, including legacy apps, right? Including private printers, including file shares, everything that you want to control access with your network. How do we enable you to control that point to point in a very segmented way? Can you please advance the slide for me? So what we're trying to illustrate here on this slide is what is the value proposition of Microsoft's SSE solution as a whole? And Jeff's going to go into a lot of detail about private access in just a couple of minutes here, but the product is more than just private access. What it's enabling is tunneled connectivity from a device to a specific app. And when I say app, you can see on the right-hand side of the slide, I mean your Microsoft apps like Exchange Online or SharePoint. I mean SaaS apps, any kind of internet app that you use for business, and I need all of your private apps and resources, not just web apps that you've traditionally been able to provide access to through app proxy. And how can we enable this? On the left, we see any user identities, endpoints, and remote networks. Basically, what you need is a device that is either hybrid joined or Entra ID joined. That device has an agent installed on it, and that agent downloads essentially rules that tells that agent what traffic to pick up. When the correct rule is activated and the traffic is picked up at the network level, then we establish a gRPC tunnel directly to that app, one session, one tunnel just to that app. And that enables us to give you the ability to control that connectivity using conditional access and continuous access evaluation in a way we have never been able to do before. Your legacy apps can be protected because we can control access to the tunnel. We can require higher levels of authentication, phishing-resistant MFA, device compliance on the tunnel itself, enabling you to protect everything internally without VPNs that allow lateral movement and port scanning. We can do this also for Microsoft endpoints and for internet and SaaS apps. Can you please advance the slide for me? The unique capabilities that we offer is just exactly what customers asked us to do, right? They said, give us integration with your stack. And that is what this first slide is showing. Integrated fabric, converging identity and network policies all together using a user interface that you're familiar with. The conditional access policies that you already know and love, that's what we've extended. And that is what you can apply to your network connection. We're doing this over Microsoft's private wide area network, which is one of the top largest private wide area networks in the world. It is completely owned by Microsoft. There are no leased lines. There is no jitter. It is totally private. And what we're trying to do is maximize your data's time within that private wide area network, minimizing it through the internet. So you can see from this slide here how huge it is. 225,000 miles of fiber, 20,000, it's actually higher than that, peering connections. Those peering connections are very interesting. Those are relationships that Microsoft has with internet service providers to enable us to even maximize your time in the private wide area network for your internet traffic. And the last component that is a real differentiator for us is how we can secure your Microsoft traffic. That is heavy traffic, typically very hard to report on and hard for customers to understand and get visibility into. But because now we're going to be able to manage that using the global service agent, global secure agent, we can show you exactly what is happening with your Microsoft traffic and enable you to protect it in ways you've never been able to before. Can you please advance the slide? So this is the security service edge architecture. And what we're trying to show here is the tunneling scenario. So devices with the GSA agent installed establish a tunnel using gRPC to each of these service endpoints. So for Microsoft traffic, there's a specific set of endpoints, internet access, a specific set of endpoints, and private access, a specific set of endpoints. And all of the logic is happening here in the cloud at these SSE service endpoints. So the device picks up the traffic and that's all it's doing. It routes it to the tunnel. For private access, which is really what we're focusing on today, the only real architectural element that you need to deploy is a private network connector. This is just a VM that has line of sight to your apps. It acts as a proxy so that you don't need any inbound access into your network. That is literally outbound access only, and it's a brokered connection directly to the device through the tunnel using gRPC. And that pretty much covers the SSE architecture. So I'd like to hand it over to Jeff now on the next slide to talk about Entra Private Access.
Thanks, Janice. So let's talk a little bit about VPNs. This is probably what many organizations, many of you on the call probably have in their environment today. If I need to access something on the corporate network or on some kind of private network, I set up a VPN, you've got load balancers and everything handling the connection on your network. And once I'm here, I have full network access. The device gets an IP address assigned via DHCP. I can see everything, everything can see me. And this is not in harmony with the principles of zero trust. We really want a least privileged solution. Now, you can make this better. You can integrate your VPN solution as an enterprise app within Entra ID. That way you can put conditional access and all the great security controls we have in the cloud-based solution. But the problem remains, even though I've hardened the front door, once I'm through the door, I still have the full network access that I had previously. So what Microsoft Entra Private Access does is by deploying this private network connector, it acts as a reverse proxy to facilitate the connectivity to only the applications or app segments that you define and nothing else. The device never gets network level access. It just gets a connection to whatever it needs. And that authorization is controlled just like any other enterprise app. As far as user group assignments, you can put conditional access policies on top of it. And I'll show a lot of this in just a second. So these are sort of the key scenarios that Janice and I have been hearing that really resonate with customers as far as the value proposition of this. First and foremost, being able to replace a VPN with a ZTNA solution is a huge win for security. And second, being able to bring conditional access policies and all of the security capabilities that the Microsoft Suite brings to you in general to what were traditionally called legacy applications, you know, your private applications, stuff that you could never modernize with a protocol such as SAML or OAuth. Being able to bring conditional access to these private applications is also a huge win. So we are going to show you how to do this and then do a demo. It won't be a live demo, it's pre-recorded, but I'll walk you through it. Now, some prerequisites before anything I'm going to show you here. I'm going to assume that you've enabled the traffic forwarding profile, which I'll show you what that looks like in the next slide. You need to deploy the Global Secure Access client to your users' devices. So in this demo, we're going to show you what it looks like on a Windows device. And you're going to need to deploy that private network connector on the private network. And it's going to have outbound internet connectivity via ports 443 and 80. So again, you don't have to open up any inbound ports, so it's very secure. As far as what does it mean when you enable the traffic forwarding profile, it means you've checked this box. So that first bullet point in that prerequisite slide I just showed you, very simple. And so let me give you the first scenario. I want to apply a conditional access policy before I am able to RDP to a server. In this case, I'm going to require phishing resistant MFA as well as device compliance before I can RDP to my domain controller. So step one, I'm going to create an enterprise app for the target server. Now, if you've never seen private access before, this is for you. I'm going to show you kind of how easy and how simple it is. But you go to entra.microsoft.com. Under Global Secure Access and under Applications, I'm going to create a new enterprise application. I'm going to call it RDP to DC1, and I define which connector group is going to be handling this traffic. Then I add an application segment, and then I define what is this? Is this an IP address? Is this an FQDN? I can publish a full site or network range if I want to, or an IP to IP range. But in this case, I'm going to select a FQDN. That's my FQDN for my domain controller, published port 3389, and the protocol is going to be TCP. So now I click apply, I click save, and I have an enterprise app ready to go. Just like any other enterprise app, I need to assign it to users and groups. So by default, no one has access unless you explicitly add them here. And I've added a group called my tier 0 admins to my domain controller, so I want to keep it to a small group of people. And I'm going the extra mile here. I could target in conditional access by just checking a specific application, but in this case, I'm going to use custom security attributes, and I'm going to say that the application tier level is tier 0. So now that I've defined the enterprise app, the next part is just creating a conditional access policy for it. So I've said if any user tries to access this app, again, it's not the user and group assignment is evaluated before conditional access policy, so I don't have to worry there. But I'm going to say target apps based on a filter, and I'm going to say if any application has application tier level equals tier 0, then this is going to apply. And of course, the application I just configured has that setting. And then I check the boxes for I want phishing resistant MFA and a compliant device. And so here's a demo. I'm going to start collecting traffic so you can kind of see what's happening. But I'm going to try to initiate a RDP session to this domain controller. You'll notice that the Global Secure Access gives me a pop-up saying, hey, you need phishing resistant MFA. If I had done this previously, it would have been silently satisfied, but this is the first time. So I'm going to use my phone and use a passkey that's stored on my authenticator. I do my Face ID, and I'm in. Now, unfortunately, as part of the demo, this took so long that the RDP session timed out, but now I've got a token. So I'm going to click OK and click connect. And now I'm in. And you can see both times that traffic was captured, port 3389. I complete the connection by entering my password for the domain admin account, and I'm in. So that's what it looks like in a nutshell. Now let me show you what we just saw. Like, it was all kind of fast. This is what happened under the hood. So we defined an enterprise app, and as part of that, the enterprise app is pushed as a policy to the client. So the client knows that as soon as I see port 3389 trying to connect to this FQDN, I need to tunnel that. So the client tunnels it to the edge. At that point, the application assignment and the conditional access policies are enforced, and we get a token. Now that I have a token, I'm going to have that traffic tunneled with the token to the private access service. That service is going to validate the token and ultimately send that traffic to our backend, or essentially it's kind of in a queue. Now the private network connector is essentially listening via those outbound ports for, is there anything in the queue? And as soon as there is, it's going to pick up that request. Now, because I acquired an FQDN, the connector needs to know where to send it. It needs an IP address. So it's going to locally do a DNS query, resolve the FQDN. I get the DNS response back. So now I know the IP address of the target server, and I establish my RDP connection. So that is sort of the flow chart. And this was an easy one. Wait till you see the next one. It's going to be far more complicated. For scenario number 2, let's say I want to access an SMB file share. Now for this, we want Kerberos single sign-on. So there's a couple things we have to do. The first thing is we're going to create a couple of enterprise apps. Now, I've already shown you what that process looks like, so I'll just show you the end result of first, you want to publish the enterprise, the SMB file share, the FQDN, and this is my web server, but in this case, I just spun up a file share there. And for port 445 TCP. And I also need to publish my domain controllers. Now it's a best practice to publish them both IP address and FQDN. So you can see here I've done both. And I need to publish ports 88 for Kerberos and 389, which is for LDAP primarily, but we'll use that for the DC locator load, which I'll show you in a second. And we'll want TCP and UDP for both of these. So now that I've created those 2 enterprise apps, and let's not forget that we need to assign users and groups to them. We need to configure private DNS for quick access. Now, under Global Secure Access, you'll notice under applications, there's this thing called quick access, and there's also enterprise apps. They're essentially the same thing under the hood with a couple of very key differences. Quick access is where private DNS lives. So if I want to configure that, this is where I go. And the other differentiator, which we're not going to demonstrate today, is that any traffic that I configure under quick access is going to feed into an application discovery report. So primarily, if you're moving from a VPN, what you might want to do is publish an entire CIDR range. So it's exchanging like for like access for your users. But the application discovery will give you a report of showing what users are actually accessing on the network. And then provides you an easy way to essentially transition to a ZTNA architecture where everything is its own enterprise app with its own unique user group assignment. But in any case, for configuring private DNS, I'm going to click Add DNS Suffix. I add my DNS suffix for my environment, and I click Save. And then quick access also needs user group assignments. So there were quick access and 2 enterprise apps that we added, so 3 total that we need to remember to assign users and groups to. So I asked my colleague Peter to record this demo for me a few weeks ago. And so this is his lab environment. But let's see what this looks like in action. So on the top, we've got the diagnostics opened, so we'll be able to see the traffic being acquired. In the bottom right, we've got the command prompt, and you can see this is an Entra joined device. It's not hybrid joined. And in the bottom left, you see that we have our Windows Explorer open. Now, if you run klist, and shows that we have no Kerberos tickets. And then we're going to go to the traffic tab. Actually, no, before that, when you define those enterprise apps, this is where it ends up. So you can see these are the policies that you will have pushed. And so you can see we've got some 389 ports published, some domain controllers. And here's the where you see the port 445. These are the file shares that we're going to be targeting. And it was brief, but you also saw the domain controllers published with ports 88 and 389. And then the private DNS rules are pushed here, saying that any DNS suffix that you define is going to be forwarded to this DNS server, which is us. That's 6.6.255.254. Essentially routes the DNS traffic through the edge. So now we start connecting, or we start acquiring the network traffic. And we're going to go to one of the file shares. And you can see the traffic starts flowing at the top. There was a connection attempt to port 445, followed by some 389s, some 88s. This is the Kerberos and the DC locators in action before the access is ultimately given. And I believe we're going to do one more klist just to show that we do in fact now have Kerberos tickets. And that was single sign-on as well. There was no prompt or anything. So this is able to fully replace just about everyone's VPN replacement with this Kerberos SSO. and the full capability of publishing any port with TCP or UDP protocols. So let's go to what happened. And this is where I was hinting that it was a little bit more complicated than the first demonstration. So once again, at the very beginning, that client is going to detect that there's someone trying to connect to a matching FQDN for port 445. So that traffic is going to be sent to the edge. The app assignment and conditional access policies are enforced. We get a token, and now we pass the traffic and the token to the private access service. That service is going to validate the token before sending it to our backend, and the connector is going to pick up the request. Now, this is going to happen 2 more times, once for each of the 3 applications that we configured. So this is the first time happening for the enterprise app for the file share. And so you see these green arrows, just know that this whole flow is happening under the hood. Once the private network connector has picked up that connection, it's going to try to access the file share. And of course, at this point, the file share is going to say, hey, can you please authenticate with Kerberos? Go get a Kerberos ticket. So now, before we can get a Kerberos ticket, we need to find a domain controller. So quick access is going to be evaluated, going through the whole authorization flow again. And then once that traffic is tunneled all the way to the private network connector, we're basically sending a service DNS query to find the domain controllers. So with that DNS query, we're going to get a DNS response that lists all of the available domain controllers. And now we need to see which of those domain controllers are working. And by the way, everything I'm describing is not anything special to private access. This is just kind of how Windows works. So now we need to talk to these domain controllers. We go through the authorization flow for that domain controller app that we configured. And now we're going to do a port 389 UDP connection to every domain controller that was returned in that DNS response. And the first one, the fastest one that responds, that's the one that Windows is going to choose. It's actually going to cache that response for future queries. But now I've got a domain controller, I know where it is, and it's responded to me, so I know it's up. So now it's a simple request. Hey, can I get a TGT? I get the TGT. I say, great, now can you give me a TGS? So I get my TGT, my TGS over the port 88. They're returned. Now I present the TGS to the SMB file share, which validates the ticket before granting access. So I know that was kind of a lot as far as what happened under the hood, but as you saw in the demo, it was pretty seamless. But if you're a real technical person, you want to know how it happens, now you know. And now I'm going to turn the time over to Janice to talk a little bit about Microsoft Entra Internet Access.
I loved that, Jeff. Thank you for that level of detail. It is so hard to get that level of detail in any docs, in any kind of videos. Super fun to geek out with you on that, so thank you. Now taking it back out to a higher level, I want to talk a bit about internet access. So Microsoft's Security Service Edge solution has 2 main product areas. It has private access, which Jeff just went into a lot of detail for us for some cool scenarios. But we also have internet access, and internet access also has 2 components. It has the Microsoft tunnel, and then it has basically everything else. So the basically everything else is a secure web gateway solution. If you're looking for a secure web gateway solution, then this might be a great option for you, especially we'll talk a little bit about the Entra Suite and some licensing stuff here in a little bit. Basically, internet access is doing the same thing, right? We have the same agent installed on your device. We download that GSA agent from the Entra portal. It's all in the Entra Admin Center. You can find it under the GSA section on the left-hand side in the GSA blade. You download that device, that agent to your device, and that enables the agent to download your rules. So we just looked at the rules for private access, but it's the same thing for internet access. For internet access, what will happen is you can create web content filtering rules that says how you want traffic to be handled on your corporate managed device. You can have universal rules to block all let's say, social media sites, and then none of your users on those devices will be able to access social media sites. That's a whole web category that is managed as a web category, and you can apply that to whatever, to all of your users as a baseline. You can also then do things like say, maybe my marketing team does need access to social media sites. So then you can create another web content filtering rule with a higher priority that enables just those users to be able to access those sites. That's what a secure web gateway is doing. It's providing allow and block functionality that you can then apply using priorities and conditional access policies so that it's applied to the correct users and you can get the correct amount of access and you can better manage your risk. So internet access, again, any user, any device, again, being able to apply conditional access policies to those connections through dedicated tunnels over a zero trust framework where we're verifying explicitly and using least privilege. I want to talk for a second about that least privilege because there is some very cool stuff you can do here using just-in-time groups. You can create just-in-time groups for things like, let's say you have a group of users who have permission to access your financial apps and write checks. And when they're going to access this SaaS app, you want to make sure that they only have access for a small amount of time. You don't want anyone to be able to kind of hack that access. You can use a just-in-time group assigned to that particular rule. And then when users want to be able to write checks, they can go into My Apps, they can request that just-in-time access, get added to that group, and then have access only for that period of time, all completely logged and reported. These are things that you can do with Entra Suite using entitlement management and then also integrated with Entra Internet Access. The Microsoft component of this is also very cool. You get some stuff there that is really unique. One of the things that you get with the Microsoft traffic, in addition to not having to hairpin it through your network using a VPN, is basically all that control and reporting. And one of the things that you can do with that is you can control, because these are your managed devices, what tenants you're going to allow them to connect to. Maybe you want to use compliant network check and require that only your devices on your compliant network, when they're connected to GSA, are able to connect to your Exchange Online. You can do that. Maybe you want to say your devices cannot allow users to connect to other tenants, even when those users have valid credentials in other tenants. Maybe you want to block that. You can do that. So there's a lot of power you have here. You can even, well, you could do this anyway, but prevent users from using personal devices to access your Microsoft traffic. So basically, internet access as a product area under SSE enables that device to pick up all traffic that's destined for internet destinations. Within the cloud service, that traffic will be evaluated for allow and block rules. Any conditional access policies will be applied, and any other kind of processing will be applied. And then that data will be routed through the private wide area network as close to that endpoint as it can get. So very cool what you can do. So I'd like to talk a little bit about the Entra Suite. So if we can pop forward a couple of slides. Basically, the Entra Suite, oh, there was an extra slide there I didn't realize we still had in there. Basically, the Entra Suite is a marketing bundle, right? It's a marketing bundle to say, hey, buy a bunch of products for a reduced price and you get a lot of functionality. But what's really cool about it is what that functionality is. What is the end-to-end scenario that unlocks? It is really the joiner, mover, leaver scenarios that we all deal with. And quite often those are disconnected. The systems that enable joiner, mover, leaver scenarios are not necessarily integrated with each other. The timing of them is awkward. And so the Entra Suite enables those scenarios by providing not just security service edge with Entra Internet Access and Entra Private Access, but also identity governance, identity protection, and verified ID with face check. So if we take a look at this slide here, we can see kind of an architecture of what this looks like, the components of Entra Suite kind of going from left to right in a scenario. On the left, we can see what happens when I'm going to hire a user. I need to onboard this user. I'm going to try to ensure that this user is who they say they are. We can do this using FastTrack with verified ID. That is a secure mechanism where a user now can prove their identity using their own credentials, create an image that can exist in your directory, and then later, when they want to confirm who they are, they can take a selfie and compare that with the existing image. Very powerful for you for scenarios like, how can I be sure that the person who has accessed this application, who has submitted this help desk ticket, who is doing whatever this work is who they say they are? And I actually hear this from my customers a lot. They're worried about their employees basically offshoring the work to other people. So you can confirm that with Entra Verified ID with FastTrack. So that's a great onboarding scenario, and that's a great scenario for later if you want to protect access to high value resources. The next piece of that scenario is governing that access. How do I make sure that people do have access to what they need and not anything more than that? So that is what identity governance gives you. You have a way to create entitlement packages so that these access packages have all of the shares and teams that users in a particular job function need access to. Users can request these access packages. Again, you can set up that just-in-time access. And then we have access recertification. Access recertification allows you to do things like give someone temporary access to something. Maybe they're in a new project. These are all basically apps in your environment. These are the apps that we're talking about when we're talking about private access and internet access. You can have all of these apps defined in access packages and automatically assigned to users when they're hired or when they change jobs. We have all this protection is integrated with Entra identity protection, that continuous risk assessment and automation, threat intelligence, zero trust adaptive risk-based access policies. This is all a component of Entra ID protection, which is part of the Entra ID suite. Also things like reporting, like risk reporting, understanding exactly what's happening in your environment. And we're pushing all of this through Entra Suite to private access and internet access. So what we've been talking about this whole session, we want to make sure that users have only the access that they need and that they have that quickly. We don't want any kind of friction points. We don't want this to be hard for people. And there's some really cool things that come with this Entra Suite too in terms of Copilot. Like specifically, I'm thinking about these access recertifications. I see these all the time. If I have a SharePoint site and I've shared that with somebody, I am constantly asked, does this person still need access? Does that person still need access? That can create a fatigue scenario where people aren't really sure. So even though I knew that they needed access at one point, maybe now I'm not sure, with Entra ID Suite and that Entra ID protection, now we have machine learning support. So that machine learning support can suggest maybe this person doesn't need access anymore because they aren't in the same org, or they don't need access anymore because they haven't accessed it or tried to access it in a long time. So that's the whole suite. And I wanted to talk about that because private access and internet access are important pieces of the puzzle, but the whole puzzle actually is a lot broader, and we want to be able to do something that's more powerful for you using the suite. So that takes us to our final kind of topic area, and that is tips and gotchas. Back to you, Jeff. Yeah.
Yep. Just turn off mute. All right, so here's some tips and gotchas. The things that if you're about to embark on a proof of concept or test this for the first time, these are the things that you should know and be aware of. As you start doing testing, you might see some addresses that start with 6.6, and as far as testing DNS resolution, that's kind of thing. And you might wonder, what is this? I don't have any network that's 6.6. So just understand that these are what we're calling synthetic IPs, which the global secure access agents kind of use essentially to do network address translation, or NAT. When we acquire traffic, we don't send it directly to its destination. That would defeat the purpose. We need to send it through the tunnel. And so when the tunnel says, hey, I've got a location for this file share you're accessing, we don't give it the 10.0 whatever private IP address, we give it 6.6. something. So that means the traffic knows, okay, I'm going through the tunnel which the Microsoft Security Service Edge has set up for me. Now in the near future, this is going to change to 198.18/15. It'll give us a few more addresses to play with. I think this is a /16 network currently. But just when you see that, now you know what it is. ICMP is not acquired today. So because that is not a layer 4 protocol, it's only layer 3, it's not TCP or UDP. So if you try to ping a server, it's not going to work. It might resolve the DNS, but you're just going to see a bunch of timeouts. So an alternative test connection that I would recommend is this test.net connection, where you can specify the username and the port, and then you'll see this TCP test succeeded equals true or not. So this is something I'd recommend as an alternative to ping. If you are going to publish an entire CIDR range, do not include port 53. Port 53 is used for DNS, and if you tunnel all of your DNS requests, you might suddenly find that I can't reach the internet anymore. So instead of doing the whole range, do ports 0 through 52, 54 through the rest of them, 65,535. So that's just a best practice. You will probably break your environments, which it's easy to recover, but you will break it if you include port 53 here. If you want to use private DNS, use the official supported way where you say specifically these are the DNS suffixes that I want to resolve on my private network. As you're troubleshooting, or if you're trying different things, understand that there's a 5-minute refresh for the GSA client. So if I publish an enterprise app for the very first time, it's going to take 5, maybe even 10 minutes if you missed the first refresh, because it has to replicate through the cloud, and then as well as your agent only checks in every 5 minutes. But go to your advanced diagnostics, open up the traffic forwarding tab, and see what's listed here. If it's not listed here, the agent is not going to acquire the traffic. Another troubleshooting tip, if you're trying to figure out what's happening, why isn't something working, again, the advanced diagnostics that are built into the client are really useful. As far as you click the start collecting button, you can see the traffic that is being tunneled, but by default, there's this filter that says action equals tunnel. So maybe if you want to see, did it even attempt to make a connection, you can clear that, and then anything where you see action equals bypass, that means the GSA agent saw it and then determined it does not match a rule, so I'm just going to let it go directly out to the internet. So that's just another helpful tip. Now, this is a big one for a lot of you hybrid joined device users. There is a bug in Windows that I want you to be aware of, where essentially if you have a GPO that is pushing these registry keys, I had a couple of my customers even say it was in the default GPO, which they had never touched, so this might be a widespread problem. Essentially, there's a bug in Windows that Windows needs to fix that says if these registries are populated, even if they're empty, then I'm going to ignore the NRPT, which if you don't know what that is, that's the name resolution policy table. That is how private DNS works. Essentially, we add a line in the NRPT that says, for DNS queries for this domain, send to this DNS server. And that's how we were able to acquire it for ourselves. But if that's being bypassed, then Kerberos single sign-on is not going to work. Anything private DNS related is not going to work. So I've listed the registry keys here. If you run into issues where you think DNS isn't working, go ahead and check, and you can delete the registry key, do a system reboot, and then see if that resolves the problem or not. It should. And assuming it does, also be aware that the next time your hybrid join device does a GP update, that these registry keys might be pushed back again. So ultimately, to fix the problem short term, find the GPO that's responsible for pushing these registry keys and delete them. And then the long-term fix is that Windows needs to fix this bug. Now for the private network connectors, this is a hidden gem here that not many people know about. We actually have published in Azure and AWS essentially a private network connector in the marketplace. So you can, with a few clicks, deploy this as opposed to having to do it all manually. I've done it myself. It's very simple, very easy. You fill out a few forms or fields, you click deploy, and you're done. So within the marketplace of either AWS or Azure, just search for Entra Private Network Connector, and you'll find it. And last but not least, if you've tried everything and there's just something that isn't working and you don't know why, if you're going to open up a support ticket, I recommend going to the advanced log collection, click start recording, reproduce your issue, and then click stop recording. That's going to create a zip file with a whole bunch of logs, which you can just, send right out the gate to support so that they can hit the ground running and start trying to help you with whatever the issue might be. Oh, that was not the last one. How many more do we got? This is the last one. So Internet Access basically has a acquire everything rule. Like there's a priority in terms of which traffic profiles are evaluated first. Microsoft is first, private access second, internet is third. But if you enable internet access by itself, your Microsoft traffic, if you have not enabled the Microsoft traffic profile, will be tunneled through the internet access tunnel. Now, there's nothing necessarily bad about this, but you're missing out on primarily the performance. There's some optimizations that we've done on the Microsoft traffic to make sure that it's really fast. And the source IP restoration will not work if the Microsoft traffic is being tunneled through internet access. So in the sign-in logs, if it's going through the Microsoft traffic profile, you'll get the original egress IP from the user. So however he first accessed the internet, his ISP or whatever it is, you'll see that IP address to know where it's coming from. And you'll also get the second IP address of the last mile of now that it's been proxied through the secure service edge, how did it exit? So you'll get both of those if it's going through the Microsoft traffic. So if you enable internet access, also enable the Microsoft traffic profile. And that's it. I hope what I've shown to you guys is exciting. Please go and try it. If you go to the Microsoft Admin Center and then go to the marketplace, you can find the Microsoft Entra Private Access or the Internet Access. These are the standalone SKUs. Or you can try the Entra Suite, which will give you a little bit more time, and that includes all of the other capabilities, including identity governance, identity protection, and verified ID with FaceCheck. And if you try it and you love it and you want to purchase it, once you purchase the license, go to fasttrack.microsoft.com, and we've got some experts. That's the product team. Some of us have personally trained. And they will help you with your production deployment, the full rollout, everything. We have some references here, which I will put in the chat shortly. And that's everything. So I know that was a lot. We have about 10 minutes left. And I'm looking to see if there are any questions in the Q&A.
Yes, so we did have some questions come in. And thank you so much, Janice and Jeff, for giving an amazing presentation. For folks who are watching live, be sure to add in your questions to the Q&A portion if we are not already addressing them. So the first question that we got is how you would actually go about migrating from VPN to private access if you're interested in getting started.
You want to take this, Jen, or shall I?
Yeah, no, I can take this one. It is a great question because it can be such a daunting prospect, right? I have one customer, I asked them how many enterprise apps do they think they have, and they said probably around 40,000. So the idea of getting to a segmented ZTNA position with 40,000 apps feels really impossible. So luckily, we have a feature built into SSE, to Global Secure Access, called Quick Access. And Quick Access is like a special enterprise app. It's a way for you to define all of the IPs and the DNS range that you want to be able to acquire at the client. This is not opening all of this up to the internet. This is just saying I want the agent on a device to acquire all of this data, and then I want to route it. Thank you for sharing that. Perfect. I want to route it to the security service edge. And by doing that, you basically can lift and shift your VPN. Like, it's duplicating your VPN in this way. It's still point-to-point access, and it's still outbound only through the proxy, through the private network connector, but it is duplicating your VPN. And then once you're here, you can see app discovery in the screenshot right below. That is a feature that is in development right now. That is a way for you, once it's released, to be able to look at all of the traffic that's picked up by Quick Access and pick and choose the apps that are discovered, to be able to see who connected to what apps, and then you can then make logical decisions about how you might want to group them for security, like Jeff was talking about, using custom security attributes, custom attributes on the actual app itself. So that's the vision for how you would migrate. Use Quick Access, duplicate your network, and then use app discovery to start picking out those apps over time until there aren't any apps left in Quick Access.
Thank you so much for clarifying that. We did get another question around pricing. So is there a way that you can go into detail about the licensing, or how can a customer effectively estimate what this might cost them in their environment?
Sure. I would be happy to talk about that too, since I see I'm still live on the screen. So if you bought all of those products I talked about in the suite individually, it would be $22 per user per month. If you only wanted to buy private access, it's $5 per user per month. If you only want to buy internet access, it's $5 per user per month. And that's why the suite is exciting, because the suite is including P2. It all requires P1 licensing. But if you don't have P2, it includes P2, and that's $12 per user per month. And if you already have P2, it's $9 per user per month. So if you have P2, the cost of the whole suite would be less than buying just private access and internet access together. And it's meant to be very cost effective. And if you have an account manager with Microsoft, you should definitely talk to them about it and see, maybe there's something special for your company or something. But yeah, it's a great value for all of those products together.
Thank you for clarifying that. Go ahead, Jeff.
The Entra Suite does not include P2. It includes identity protection, which is a part of P2. And so if you already have P2, that's why the starting price goes from $12 to $9 per user per month. Starting at 22, going to 9 is a big discount. And of course, that's before all of the negotiations that your company may or may not do. You might even get a lower price.
Thanks for that, Jeff.
Great to know, and happy to hear that it's a great value for customers. A couple more questions before we wrap up. When we are talking about some of the legacy on-prem apps that customers have, I know that in the very beginning, Janice, you showed that you're able to use some of these offerings in order to apply conditional access controls. But is this really a one-to-one comparison where I'm able to put the same controls that I can on my cloud apps that I can onto my on-prem apps as well?
Yes. Yes,
awesome.
Right? It's
Yay!
So exciting. And it's because of what Jeff was showing in the demo, right? What does an enterprise app actually mean? And it really just means, how am I acquiring traffic, and then what am I doing with it? And it doesn't matter where it's going, because I am able to manage that network connection itself. You can apply conditional access and continuous access evaluation on the network connection. It doesn't matter where it's going. So super powerful, super exciting to be able to do that for all these legacy apps.
One other capability that we didn't talk about today But if you do a search for something called universal conditional access, we mentioned that there were 3 tunnels, one for private access, internet access, and Microsoft traffic. And these tunnels under the hood get their own tokens too. And so you can put conditional access in policies and say, before my users can even connect to the edge and spin up a tunnel and even access the internet, maybe I want to require MFA or make sure they're coming from a compliant device.
So cool.
Thank you. Yeah, it is so cool. Thank you so much for clarifying that. I know that sometimes those things are very exciting for customers because they've wanted it for so long that when it's finally here, it can be a bit of a shocker. I think we only have time for 2 more questions, so I'll get to those. I know that we did see some more pop into the chat, so we'll be sure to address those afterwards. And also feel free to reach out if you are watching this recorded on YouTube. Feel free to reach out to us there or on LinkedIn. So the 2 last questions, I usually route all of my Microsoft and Office traffic directly to the internet to avoid hairpinning traffic. What other kind of performance will GSA offer for Microsoft traffic?
Want me to take this, Janice? I'll show you.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, so as far as performance for Microsoft traffic goes, as I mentioned briefly earlier, the tunneling through the Microsoft tunnel has been highly optimized for all of the internet traffic. Also consider that the edges where the traffic is being tunneled to, many times it's co-located with the data centers that you're already connecting to. So in some cases, the ISP might route you in a less performant way than we would with the Global Secure Access Agent. So the goal, there's not any specific number that I would share that said like it's within X number of milliseconds, but it's going to be very fast. It might even be faster than the internet connection. So that's the at least that's the goal. We want it to be faster than.
I mean, we have seen that. We are seeing that anecdotally. It is faster connecting from the same device to the same Microsoft endpoint versus the internet versus security service edge. We are seeing performance improvement.
Okay, last question. What if I have a SaaS app that has application side control that requires traffic to come from a trusted network? Does all of that still apply, Jeff?
Yes, so this is a interesting scenario where I've got an application, usually let's say it's a web application on the net, but the app has some kind of policy that says I'm only going to accept connections from a trusted IP address. Now, traditionally, you have to backhaul all of the traffic through a VPN, and essentially we can support and do the same thing. Now, it's unfortunate that I would recommend instead of that approach, if you can, move away from the app enforcement to requiring a compliant network check and let the IDP handle it. But there are some scenarios where let's say the application has a local credential that's not single sign-on. It's just I'm signing in locally to the app, and I want to protect that as well. What you can essentially do is publish this website as an FQDN in private access. It'll route through the edge to the private network connector, and then from that private network, make it to the website. So because you're still, I don't like saying it, but you're essentially hairpinning the traffic through the private network connector, you can get like for like controls for that kind of scenario.
Well, thank you so much, Janice and Jeff, for an incredible session. This was so informative and a great mix of high level and technical content. For those of you who are wanting to share this out with some colleagues, be sure to go to aka.ms/425show/videos. That links you directly to our playlist on the Microsoft Security Community channel page, where you'll be able to see all of our previous episodes. Be sure to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so that way you see when this webinar goes live, as well as future ones. And we're in the middle of planning for our November session. So we're still very much in listening mode to figure out how we want to move the 425 show forward with a focus on deep technical content that's spanning across some of the Microsoft security products. So be sure to go to aka.ms/425show survey. Tell us what you think about the show. any feedback on ways that you would like for us to improve, and also future show ideas. So we make sure that we are giving you content that's helpful and informative. And then with that, I know that in 2 weeks, right before Halloween on October 30th, we're going to be having a Zero Trust centric session that's going to be spanning Entra, Intune, a couple other product areas. So it'll be a fantastic discussion that's starting at 8 a.m. Pacific. If you do want to tune in live, you can register via the link on our LinkedIn channel or on our LinkedIn page on the Microsoft Entra community channel LinkedIn page. So thank you so much for joining, everyone, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.